And you're all unmuted. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another roadmap stream. Tonight, a little bit different than you're used to. It is the first of the rush hour focused roadmaps. I'm joined by Matt and Adam. How are you both tonight?
Pretty good. Very good, thank you.
Pretty good, pretty good. So I'm Natalie, for anybody that doesn't know who I am. I'm the community manager here at Dovetail, and we're going to be having a chat about the roadmap and a few particular highlights with regards to rush hour. Matt, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody,
Sure.
in case they don't know who you are?
I'm Matt, and I'm the senior producer on Train Sim World. I basically look after the team who are building the game and the where we're going to take the game and making sure it comes out.
And how about you, Adam? What do you do here at Dovetail?
Hi, I'm producer. I head up what is called the preservation crew, and what we look after is all the routes and trains that are already available, and roll back any feedback that comes in, any improvements that are reported to us, and also have a good time and a bit of testing and trialing of different things. So yeah.
Great. So for anybody wondering what is the roadmap and what are the differences with the rush hour roadmap and the regular one. So when you look at the article that we put out today, they do actually look rather similar, and a lot of the stuff on it you will have already seen before. But what it means now is that during these streams in particular, we're going to be focusing on a lot of the rush hour content that you've seen in there and a lot of what you can look forward to with the rush hour roadmap. It doesn't mean that we're going to neglect everything else that's on there. So when things move, we will keep you updated, and you are going to see some things on there that you've seen before. But yeah, we're just sorry, am I quiet for some people? I'm seeing people saying they're struggling to hear me.
You're fine. It's fixed. Carry on.
Okay, sorry. But yeah, so Adam, everybody thought last time you were on the stream, that was going to be the last time you were joining us for the roadmap for a while.
They weren't the only ones as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's a nice surprise, a welcome surprise to see you on here tonight.
I love being on these streams.
You do? But why have we brought you on here tonight?
Because when Rush Hour comes out, there's going to be an awful lot of improvements and feedback implemented into the Preserve collection as well. So actually, the preservation crew is very much involved in the process that's going on, and we're just as busy as everybody else.
And after our last roadmap, which was a few weeks ago now, I can't remember the exact 2 weeks, I think. It brought up some questions on the forums and within the community about how your work is going to impact the players when we release Rush Hour. There was a big concern that the work you've done isn't going to be ported over correctly, or that perhaps there's going to be errors that come across with your work. First of all, can you tell us, can you try and reassure us about one of the biggest concerns was sound, and how sound is going to be affected on the Preserve collection going forward? Is this something the players need to worry about?
Not at all. No, there should be no worry about the routes and trains that you've already got. So basically, for anyone that maybe wasn't here last year, we also updated Train Sim World 2 from what is known, the underlying engine that runs Train Sim World is called Unreal. And we moved from version 4.16 to version 4.23, and that was actually a major step up in a number of systems for the software, and therefore it had some knock-on effects that we weren't fully expecting, and it did cause some bumps in the road for a large number of the Preserve collection, and we saw a minor amount of degradation of the audio. So what we've been doing is resetting those and putting things back in order. And we're still doing that, as well as alongside adding any new features that have been added to the software since, to make sure the preserved collection remains top notch and where everyone wants it to be. Now, with the release of Rush Hour, we are once again updating that underlying engine, Unreal, but this time we're going from 4.23 to 4.26, which is a much smaller step, and therefore there's a lot less that will be impacted by the software. There's a lot less that can cause problems, and so the transition is an awful lot smoother. And it also means that everything, as far as I've been informed, everything will be coming out together at the same time. Last year there was a staggered release. We will not be doing a staggered release this year. Every indication I've been given is that everything will be released at the same time as Rush Hour. And with regard to concerns about stuff being broken or anything that isn't going to work, well, we have already been testing all of the routes and trains that are currently available in the software for a number of weeks now. And we're about to hit our second major phase of the testing of those routes and trains. So everything so far is going really well.
So obviously we can't promise that there are going to be absolutely no hurdles that you come across with this process.
That's software development to an extent.
Yes. But what we can reassure the players is that perhaps then you're not going to come across the same issues you did last time.
To date, there has been no real issues of concern raised. There has been feedback coming through, and it's great because we want feedback to be coming through from the software and how it's operating. And if there are any issues, we're actually more afraid if nothing is reported. That's supposed to be a good thing, but when you're developing software, you want people to find issues. You don't want them to say, oh, it's all fine. So yeah, as I say, it's been a number of weeks now that we've been working on this. I've had the whole team focused on this, and so far a large amount of reported issues have been non-issues. So for example, one would be about the operation of the 395 on Southeastern. That has a complicated way of driving, and that stumbled some of our tested. So what they reported as issues actually weren't issues.
So the preserved content is currently going through quite an extensive testing process.
Yes, very much so.
Also, at this point, can I just give a shout out to the beta group? We have a group of testers on our beta Discord and forum who have been testing the legacy content in the 426 base version of the game, doing a fantastic job. Very, very much appreciate it, and we're getting some really good feedback from that group as well. So there's a wider group than even just the internal testers working on this. There are some, we really appreciate your help, everybody. Thank you.
Definitely.
That's great. So we're doing everything we can basically to try and make it a smooth transition if we can.
Yep, it should be seamless.
Don't promise that.
The only glitch is the size of the download. Obviously, because every piece of software, every train and route is going to be updated to 426, then that may well be quite a large download when Rush Hour is released.
The download size actually brings me on to another question I had for you, Adam, which is you touched on the fact that everybody's preserved content is going to be released at once, isn't it? So with the Rush Hour update, everybody is going to get all of their preserved stuff updated.
Yeah.
Like you said, this is gonna cause a large download.
Yes, I mean, even if we haven't touched anything intentionally, such as adding a feature or anything or correcting localization, because it's had to be recooked underneath on the 426 version, it means the same content will need to come out again. So yeah, everything will be re-downloaded.
But as far as preserved collection is concerned, instead of a staggered approach, they're getting everything. They're getting everything at once.
Day one. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have? I mean, this is no promise, but do you have a very rough idea of the download size by any chance?
Well, it all depends on how many routes and trains you have. So there isn't going to be a single download size for everybody. So yeah, I mean, you're talking tens of gigabytes because of the size of routes and trains as they are, but it's going to be however many routes and trains you have. So
this is
all
something.
we're saying is expect a big download.
Yeah. So for anybody that has, let's say, a large amount of our collection, be prepared that you are going to have to update a lot of stuff.
Yes, it may be one of those where it's worth leaving the system on overnight, maybe, and coming back in the morning.
It's also worth making sure that before you play the game, make sure it has all finished downloading. Just go into your console settings or into Steam and just make sure it has finished downloading, because sometimes the consoles or something will let you play the game even though perhaps all the DLC hasn't finished updating. So just check it. If it hasn't finished updating, just let it do that.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you have a list of what you've been working on and what is going to come with this update. By no means do I expect you to list absolutely everything.
I don't want to know. That's
a while. But for anybody that's seen the roadmap, obviously you'll see that little rush hour dot next to some of the preserved collection. So could you give us a little bit more detail about what the players will be getting?
So just a real top line stuff, because there's going to be many more opportunities to detail what we have changed and what are the things we've put in. And obviously then the patch notes are going to be where all the detail is. So a really high level is things like the improvements to Bakerloo line, where the train wasn't set to stop at the end of the platform. For console users, the missing iconic locations like the Shard and Wembley Stadium on the horizon, those things are in there. So it's some backdated stuff. More recently, we've been adding rail driver to support to the main Specibarn, Rapid Transit and West Somerset routes. We've also been implementing player feedback on West Somerset and improving the timetable. If you look back on a previous stream, it may have been the previous one on the 15th, or it may have been back in May. I did go into detail about what we've done with West Somerset, so it's actually worth going back to a previous stream on that. We have been resolving some issues on East Coastway with Lewis Station and trains spawning backwards in the scenario planner. So those now, so that's really cool. And we've obviously been doing a lot of improvements to the main Specibarn audio, locomotive audio, and the safety system as well. So those are just some real headliners of what we've been working on.
And this list is likely to change?
No, at the moment, those are things I'm fairly confident about. Those are things that are mostly finished and now in testing. There are a few other things that we're still working on. So yeah, I'm pretty confident all of that stuff is going to come out. I'd be surprised, because we have got time to resolve any issues that are reported about that content.
So if anything does change, is it more likely that something is going to be added, not excluded?
I think we're also trying to curtail adding any more stuff. We need to be focused on what is there, making sure it's stable, making sure everything works as intended for day one.
Now, Matt, I actually have a question for you with regards to when the preserved collection stuff gets updated. Will the update reset everyone's progress or their profiles? Do we have an answer to that yet, or?
No, it shouldn't cause any problems with your progress or your profiles. What we do still need to do some investigation on is for users who upgrade to next-gen consoles, although experiences we've seen so far seem to indicate that your profile transfers across just because of the way the platforms are doing it. We're not doing anything to make that happen. But it's using the cloud systems on PlayStation and Xbox, and people are saying that they're coming across, but we haven't actually got as far as doing any testing on that side yet. So we still need to do a bit more our side just to make sure we're comfortable with that. But no, the update from the game itself won't cause you any resets at all, no.
But we can't currently confirm how it will affect the next gen users yet.
If you're already on next gen, again, that's no change. It's if you move to next gen, then yes, we still need to do some more before we can give that the final stamp. But so far, indications are looking positive.
That's great. That's great. Right. Couple of things before we head on to you, Matt, because we're gonna be discussing some pretty nifty rush hour stuff tonight, aren't we?
We are.
But before we get to that, I'm just going to answer some other things with regards to the roadmap today. So there's been a lot of discussion with regards to Penzance and what locos are going to be included with that route. We don't have a firm answer for you. We know that it's going to include the Class 150, but we don't know the whole scope of the project yet, which is why we're unable to give you an exact answer. But when we have more details about what else is included, we will let you know. Now, Matt, let's talk rush hour. And tonight, what are you going to be discussing with regards to rush hour tonight?
So tonight we're talking about the immersion controls and the new the gradient and pause screen.
Okay.
We're starting to look at the pause screen. We're going to start with the new overview panel where the gradient information is. So that's kind of our main things that we're going to look at tonight.
So my first question is obviously, what have you done to the pause screen?
So in the current, when you press escape, when you pause the game at the moment, you get like an overview panel, which gives you the objective of the overview panel is to tell you kind of what you are and where you're going. What do you need to know right now? Where are you in the map? So there's a map on there and so forth. What's your gradient? What's your upcoming speed limits? And because we couldn't get the ideal information that we wanted on there, which is all graphs and so forth, it kind of gives you some, it's more laid out like a table of numbers, which is never the most attractive way of doing it, but it does give the information. What we've done is we've got the graph in there now, so we've got the speed and the gradient graphs in there, which is phenomenal. It gives you a lot more information about the upcoming limits. You can see the screenshot here. Now I do want to caveat, this is what they call an artist's impression. So this is the UI designer has mocked this up, and the intention is that we'll get as close as this as we can, but for now this gives you a really good idea of what we're looking at. So one of the first things is you'll notice it's full screen. It's not a little window in the middle with lots of rubbish around the outside. More screen to see more useful information. You still get the information about your train, you still get the information about clock and so forth in the corner there, but the gradient information, where you're going on it, when you're due there, where tunnels might be, are all now listed on there as and you can see the place names on there as well. And you can see the speed limits on the top graph. I was getting to it with the in the red line. You can see where it's gone from a 40 limit down to a 10 limit down to a 5 limit, so you can see what your upcoming speed limits are, and those graphs will be synchronized, so you can see where the speeds change relative to the gradients that are coming up, or tunnel portals and so forth that might be there. We're not 100% on whether the tunnel indicator will make it, but again, this is what we were trying to aspire to get towards, and that gives you a 10 mile or 10 kilometer, depending on the units of the route, site ahead of you of what's going on. And then the green line just gives you a little indicator of, you know, what's happening with your speed just over the last mile or so, or kilometer again. So you can see, just immediately pressing the pause key, you get a big screen with lots of really cool information, which tells you a lot more about what's going on right now and what's going to be coming up, which is really useful.
So when you were creating this, or while you're creating, what is the actual purpose of that update? What were you trying to achieve beyond making it look cool?
It's as I was saying, it's about making sure you've got the knowledge of what's coming up. You know, if you're driving a heavy American freight train, long train, or you're driving something like an upcoming steam loco, for example, then knowing what's ahead of you is really important. What's the gradient like? How can you plan what you're going to be doing with regards to braking, making sure the locomotive is in the right shape to deal with what's up ahead of it? And really, with the way that the way that TSW2 is right today, you know what the next gradient is, the next speed limit is, which is fine, but it doesn't tell you what's going on further than that. You need more notice to be able to slow down enough. You need more notice to be able to be realize actually you've got to slow down, but you've also got a big hill, so you might need to just change how you're behaving with the train on that. So having that information means that you've got it to hand. Putting it on the pause screen means it's not cluttering up your screen.
Yeah.
So you can still focus on what's going out on the screen, and then remote it. Think of it like, you know, a knee board in flight sim terms, or pulling out a clipboard or something, so that you can just remind yourself what's going on. So it feels like it's it gives you the information that you need in a way that you can just look it up and get back to your driving and then focus on that, which we think should be really, really cool.
So for somebody who's like a complete novice to the game, let's take me for example, this would make it a lot easier for players to get the information they need and to understand what they're actually doing.
Yeah, you see the context of the journey that you're on, because you'll see that the speed limits, you get those, you know, more readily displayed on the HUD already. You don't get the advanced warning of multiple speed limits. There's a particular section on, for example, Northern Transpennine, when you're heading in towards Stallabridge, where unless you know to expect it, you get tricked almost by a 15 miles an hour speed limit coming into the junction before Stallabridge.
Yeah.
The previous speed limit for that was 60, and there's not that much gap between the two. So if you're not expecting it, you're not slowing down for it. You just make yourself for the 60, and then suddenly it's 15 and you're panicking. Whereas with this graph, you know, every now and again you'd have looked, you'd have pressed escape.
Yeah.
There's a low speed limit coming up. I'll gently let the loco slow down for it. You'll also know, why is this train just driving so hard all of a sudden? You'll have known 10 miles ago there was a hill coming up.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've known that actually the speed limit's going down, but it's also on an uphill. I'll just let the train slow itself down. I don't have to brake so hard, because one of the other things you find is if you're not expecting gradients, you can drive. You put the brakes on, and the train will slow down. And if you're suddenly going up a steep hill and you haven't realised it, suddenly the train's screeching to a halt because, hey, gravity is stopping you now as well. So again, this is about giving you that information, and by putting it effectively on the pause screen, so that you go and look it up and then you come back into the game, it's much easier to sort of remember that information. You become more familiar because you remember the patterns, the scenes, when these things occurred in relative to the scenery that you saw. So it actually will help you learn the route as well, and you'll find yourself looking back to it less and less. But if it doesn't, that's fine. It's always there. You can always access it.
And it should just be a bit easier to digest.
Yeah, I mean, it's graphs. I mean, pictures are always a lot easier. It seems like there's less information on that. I know when we were we've gone through various designs, and one of the designs had lots more information on it. And as we looked at it, it's just like, most of this can go. It's in the graph, you know. So it's you get not only is the graph giving you more information, it's actually representing a lot of what you had before in that screen. So the screen looks cleaner. It looks like there's less on it, but actually there's so much more on it. It's really useful.
Now, obviously, we've touched on gradient there in your answer, and the chat are asking, have we fixed the gradient display and have we updated the HUD?
So there is a ticket in the system for getting that done. It is assigned to the UI engineer to look at. It is not fixed at this particular moment. I am not going to make a promise right here, right now, that it is getting done, because there is a lot of work to do. But we want to fix it, and it is assigned on someone's queue to look at. So we are going to do our best to get that one fixed. That will also affect the where you sometimes have to open the doors on the left-hand side when you want to open them on the right-hand side. It's the same problem. It's thinking the train is the wrong way round, essentially. So and the problem is actually that it's overcompensating. The internals of the game are flipping the train correctly, but the HUD is also flipping it in the expectation that it's going the wrong way. So the end result is it gets itself completely confused. So the fix is to make it think less hard and just get on with it.
So what you'd think was like a really quick fix and really simple is actually a little bit complicated to get working the way you want.
Knowing where the front of a train is surprisingly difficult.
Okay, yeah.
It's really, you know, is it the front of a train going in which direction? Is it reversing, or is that now the front? You know, it's really complicated, but the game does have it right. But what's happening is not that it doesn't actually know; it's that it's knowing it. It's compensating twice, which means it looks like it's not doing anything at all. So we have to get rid of one of those compensations, and it should all then work. So I'm not going to, because that sounds like it's relatively straightforward. There could be cans of worms there. So until we actually do the fix and it's in, I'm not going to say it's in, but we're aware of it, completely appreciate that it's a pain, and we're going to do our best to get it fixed, and we'll let you know once it is.
Thanks for that. I've been bitten by the hand before myself, so one of the other questions that's cropping up quite a lot as well is, are we planning to add labels to the map, the in-game map? I think we've had a discussion about this before, obviously not on stream, me and you, Matt, but can you explain to the community, well, can you give them that answer?
So the 2D map that relates to the one that you pull up with like pressing the touchpad on the PS4 or 9 key on the keyboard would be great to get maps on it. It's clearly missing from that screen, giving you more information. But we've looked into it, and indeed you've seen some of the dev. When I've done a dev stream, and you'll have seen that the map in the dev version does have names on it, but that's uncooked content essentially. That is I'm literally running that in the editor, and what it turns out is that when we try and cook that, everything falls to pieces, and it's because of the way that the map was developed, the way that the coding for the map was done. Actually, then adding other stuff onto the map seems to cause problems. It's because of things being loaded and unloaded in memory that cause the map is expecting these labels, the back end for these labels to be present, but it's gone, and that causes it to then crash. So there are things to do there, but in addition to that, it also just needs to look better, so you don't end up with lots of overlapping names everywhere, and having some better strategy for dealing with that. So totally get and appreciate the need for putting labels on there. It's not coming in rush hour, but it is something that we are looking at. We've done some prototype designs for what we want it to look like, and the engineering team are looking at how we can fix up the implementation of the map, so that we can get rid of this underlying issue, and then we can start getting more creative with it. There's a lot we want to do with that 2D map, not just putting labels on it. We want to put a lot more contextual information on there, but we'll come back to that once we can do it. Right now, not coming in rush hour.
And that actually brings me back to you, Adam. With regards to things that aren't going to make it into rush hour and this particular update, there's still quite a lot that the preservation crew want to get working on, isn't there?
Absolutely, we haven't finished our process either. So features such as level crossings, they are still slowly being installed as we work on routes. Livery designer is still underway. So my artist Jake, he's been working on the heavy freight pack. So yeah, rush hour, even after rush hour, we will be continuing our process of upgrading routes.
Yeah, because I imagine obviously the core of your focus at the moment is on rush hour, and we don't want everybody to think that you're just going to forget about all these jobs that are still on the roadmap. You are going to be going back to them, aren't you?
Well, it's not that we're focused on rush hour. We're focused on rush hour for the preservation crew. Sorry, the preserve collection. Those names are always so close together. So yeah, what we're doing is making sure that the preserve collection comes across without any hitches. And yeah, we'll be continuing our role to support routes and trains.
Excellent. And back to you, Matt. So another question we've had from the chat is, are you able to show the track distances to the next stop?
Track distances to the next stop. Oh no, so at the moment it's still showing it as the crow flies. We don't have the that is another one on our to-do list. It's slightly more time consuming to implement or rather to run at runtime, because the code at the moment for following down track to actually follow a track path to get to a particular point is a bit more time consuming to run. So as the crow flies is near instantaneous. It's very, very simple for it to do. So if we were to switch that to actually navigating the track path, then there'd be potential performance impact on that. So we need to optimize that flow a little bit before we start putting more weight on it. But no, we want to do that. Again, it's not coming in rush hour. And again, when there's news on that, we'll let you know.
So you're not promising anything there. You're just saying.
No. doing the opposite of promising things. I'm saying it is absolutely not coming in rush hour.
Okay, excellent. Now, you mentioned the controls and the immersion controls. Can we go into a little detail about what you've done there and what you're planning to do with the controls?
Yeah. It's really cool. This is one of my favorite bits, actually.
Okay.
As you know, if you're a controller player for the game, we in Train Sim World 2, we introduced the new immersion controls, which was a rethink about how the controller worked and simplified it. We got rid of the menus that were in there, which meant there was a lot less functionality on the controller. But by focusing on the stuff that people commonly use when you're driving the trains, made it much easier to do common tasks like opening the doors as a single click, getting to an outside camera as a single click to get back inside the cab. So it's really cool. But we lost a lot of functionality, which was secondary functions that you know that were lesser used by a lot of people, but were clearly missed. And there are one of the people, I see people on the forum saying, oh, I really like immersion, but I need to use classic because I want to do vertical camera movements or things like that. So it's kind of, you know, people clearly love the way that the immersion controls work, but they don't want to lose those extra functions.
Weren't some of the safety systems impacted by that?
No, they weren't available previously.
Right.
So what we've done is we had a think, and the problem is when you've got a controller, I'll bring my prop up here. It's got a limited number of buttons. Okay, it's not a keyboard. This is not a keyboard. Yeah, Adam's got his.
I've also got mine.
There you go. So the challenge is, how do you make more buttons to get more functionality? And the answer to that is effectively the concept of shift functions. But one of the overriding principles of this is we did not want to change what people had already learned in how to use the immersion controls. So what we've done is we've managed to find a couple of spaces in the control mechanism we were using where we can actually create the concept of shift keys, and that then opens up a world of new buttons for us to play with. So what we've done is we've introduced the operations shift and the camera shift.
Okay, you're losing me a bit there.
Okay.
Shift keys. How exactly do they work?
Right. So you're playing the game, and there you are. And I'm going to do it this way around. And you're playing the game, and you suddenly want another function. I want these D-pads to do something else.
Right.
So I press and hold a button. And then I've got now the D-pads by pressing a button and a D-pad button. There are different key combinations, so I can give them different functionality. So while, for example, the square key in this case is held down, I'm in operation shift mode, which means effectively this has a whole new mapping of buttons on it.
That makes sense. So you can effectively, so by holding one down, let's say the D-pad, I could then push the D button and say left arrow, and suddenly that would do something else, or then I could push the up and the right, and I've got all these different options available to me now.
Yeah, so we've created so we haven't got remapping, so I just want to say that we don't have custom remapping. So what we've done is we've defined the square button, or looking at Xbox controller, X button as shift key for operations, and then holding down the right joystick is the camera shift key. Now the operation shift key is about controlling the train. So for example, with the shift key, the operation shift key down, you have access to the other two functions of PZB. So that's the override 40 kmh button, the BFL 40, and the PZB release button, which are now just a couple of, a shift button away rather than move the cursor around and find it. And so coming out of the LZB, for example, on Colnacken becomes trivially easy rather than trying to go and look down at the controls. For those that want to use the controls, you can still look down at the controls if you want to, obviously. The other function you've got on operation shift, another function is AFB, or cruise control speed set. So when you're in operation shift, gets the controller out, you can use these two buttons, I think it is, to operate AFB control directly from the controller. So then that's the same as the throttle keys when it's not being used for shifted. So it's shifted throttles become AFB controls. So I'm trying to think of what else we've got on there. Sanding is now on the controller, another key one that I know a lot of people have been asking for. When you hold the left stick down, you get a horn. If you operation shift and hold the left stick down, you get the other horn. So now you can blow both horns from the controller. Yeah,
I like that. I like that. Didn't you also mention something to me about the cameras as well?
So yes, so we have the camera shift function as well. So there's a number of things that we wanted to do there. So for example, vertical movement of the camera. So you're in an external camera and you want to go up or down. Again, you can't do that in the immersion controls. You could in the classic controls. You can now again in the immersion controls by using camera shift and the triggers, which will now let you go up and down. You've got the ability. So another thing that you could do previously was pick a camera. So you could press a button previously to bring up the menu of the millions of cameras that were available. Now again, we've not brought menus back. We've still retained the original goal, which was don't bring up these menus. They're just ugly and they interrupt the experience. But now using the camera shift button, you can cycle through all the internal cameras and all the external cameras. So if you want to get into a number 8 view, as it would be on the keyboard, it's a couple of clicks away. And then you can always single click that stick to get back into the cab view. So no matter what you've managed to do with your camera, you're looking at a fuse box at the ceiling or something, press a single click and you'll be back looking out the cab. So you don't have to worry about, well, I'm trying to drive the train. I can't look over there because it'll take me too long to get back. You don't have to worry about it. Just single click and you're back where you're looking again. So
That's great.
so you've got that. Another thing that people really liked when we brought the immersion controls was you could zoom in the cab view.
Yeah, the chat are actually asking, is there zoom in the external camera now?
Yes, it is. So it's now a shift function. So when you got the camera shift down, then your left joystick now zones, and it will do that on every camera view.
That is brilliant.
Yeah, it's taken me a little bit of time just to get the new muscle memory for learning because becomes second nature after you learn to use controls.
Yeah.
And once we added the new functionality in, it's taken me a minute to get used to it. But I was driving Colnack and I was driving the IC3, and then it came to the bit where you have to go through the LZB ender, and I had to release it, and I was like, I have to look down at pressed a button and it released. And this is genius.
So obviously you've got used to using these controllers now, and what you've just explained sounds like really quite complicated. There's a lot of changes being made. Is it going to be complicated for people to use these controllers, and are they going to have to relearn how to use the controller? I mean, is getting the train moving going to be different or not?
Not at all. One of the key tenets for what we've been trying to do here is don't change what people already know. Everyone loves what there is in the immersion controls. There's very few people that dislike it, other than the fact that it doesn't do everything they want it to do. So leave it alone. Essentially, has been the guiding principle on this. Don't touch it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But we need to add. We need to add to it, and this is what we've done. Is we found a couple of sensible places that we can create these shifts, which mean that we can add new functionality. So, for example, if this all sounds a bit oof, I don't know what's going on here. This is a bit.
Yeah.
Just ignore it. Forget it. Nothing changes. Okay. The game you're used to using, the controls you're used to using, will all work fine. And then when you're ready for understanding it, Sam, can you bring up that pause screen again a minute?
I was thinking the same thing actually.
Okay.
When you actually, I mean, I can't show you what's in there at the moment, but you'll notice next to overview there's a thing that says control guide. And there's a thing that says HUD guide, but we'll come to that later. So okay, you can finish it, come off that now. What the control guide will do is it brings the overview of this, what your controller settings are, what buttons do what. Keyboard is also now in there as well. So if you're playing with keyboard and you hit control guide, then it'll give you all the keyboard mappings as well. It means you haven't got to go into settings, which when we thought about it, it's just like, so if I'm playing the game and I don't quite know what button does what, going into settings doesn't feel like the right place to find that information. We should make it to it's more surface it to be more user friendly. So the control guide is right there. It's literally left button once to find that control guide. So if you're playing on the controller and you want to experiment with the new controls, they are all there. And you can see the pictures showing you what all the buttons do, and you can learn them at your pace. If you were used to using directly clicking on the buttons or operating the horns manually, all of that will still work the way that you're doing it. This is all as additive.
And one of the questions from Mark B is, will the new control layout work with the older DLC?
So that the same restrictions apply that have always applied. So in service mode, immersion controls always works everywhere. Where the immersion controls don't always apply is when you're running scenarios or tutorials. And I know one of the things Adam's team is doing is looking at where they can upgrade that content to be the reason for the problem is, or the cause of the problem is that a tutorial or a scenario written before the immersion control was considered had really helpful tooltips on it saying, and now press the X button to do this. Well, of course, if you're driving with the immersion controls, someone telling you to press a button and it will do something different if you press it using the immersion controls, that's just going to make your mind go bonkers. So the idea was what's the lesser of the evils here? Give you a game which actually is giving you the wrong instructions, or just put you on the other controls so at least the instructions are right. And then what Adam's team is doing as they go through content is looking to see how they can change that and then release that restriction so that it'll work with the immersion stuff. So that's coming as Adam's team works through it, but everything that I've described here works in service mode across the board, exactly the same as the current immersion works across in service mode across the board. It's scenarios and tutorials in the older content that's still limited to classic mode.
And funnily enough, the latest route to get that pass has been West Somerset. So what we've done is we've unlocked West Somerset. You can choose whichever control mode you want, and it will let you use it. So yeah,
that's great. So as we're talking about controls and consoles, the next question that's heading your way, Matt, is what are the memory? Sorry, let me rephrase. Why are the memory optimizations part of the Rush Hour update, and how will this impact layers?
So as Adam mentioned earlier on, we've done an Unreal Engine upgrade. We went from 423 to 426. And doing an Unreal Engine upgrade to a game is like moving your house onto different foundations.
Right.
It's no small task, and it doesn't come across without cracks. And the foundations are new, flashy, and the foundations are built with different water pipes coming up and so forth. So you have to try and get everything working with the way that things work in the new system. And so what we're doing now is, having got everything working well under Unreal Engine 426, what we found is that it executes the game actually in quite a different way. It's difficult to really comprehend, but you can generate this graph showing you what all of the different executions parts of the game are doing at any point given particular frame. And what we found is that between 423 and 426, they look completely different. Now, that means that the game is now running very differently, which means optimization needs to be rethought about, because how you optimize for 426 is not going to be how we were optimizing it for 423. So, and that's the execution side of it, but it also impacts how memory is used as well. So we are reevaluating how the game is now running on 426. So this is why it's part of Rush Hour. What does it now look like? What can we now seeing on there? And we're also looking at the impact for, because one of the other benefits of going to 426 is it can natively support the next gen consoles, like PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and Series S.
I was going to ask you about that. Have you learned from porting over, from using the next generation consoles? Has it taught you stuff that's useful?
Not so far. What it does is it puts us in a bigger playground.
Okay.
We've got more space to move around in the bigger consoles, and so we're working out what we can do with that space. What are the right ways of using that space so we can dial settings up, or enable layers, for example, is another potential option we're looking at there. So we need to. These are things that the team are literally looking at very, very shortly. If one guy's already looking at it at the moment, is how can we make best use of the next gen consoles, and then how can we make sure we're still making the right use, the best use of the Xbox One and the PS4, and get the best out of those as well, because we're on these new foundations with 426. It has changed things, not substantially from a memory perspective, but we need to make sure it's just re-evaluating it and make sure it's correct. So, and once we've got that in place, then we can work out what happens where, in terms of, particularly I know there's a lot of demand for Munich and the layers that are not active on consoles on Munich, and we want to find a way to make that happen in one way, shape or form. We are looking at a couple of other options using multiple timetable support that was added with the Diesel Legends pack, and doing something along those lines as a kind of it's our last resort option, if you like. If we can't do a better option, that will at least enable something better than is already there, but the team are still investigating. So we'll come back to you on that over between, as we run up to rush hour release. We'll have more information on that.
Yeah, one of the concerns I've seen is that people think that because we're going, or not think, they feel that because we're going to next generation, we're going to stop showing the love for the previous generation consoles, and that's just not the case, is it?
There's so many more people using the Xbox One and the PS4 at the moment. If you've tried to buy a PS5 and an Xbox Series X, it's still not easy even now. So there's still so many people using those consoles. Of course, we're not going to abandon them. They're still very much on our minds because there's so many of you using them. The team are, I do all my playtesting on Xbox One dev kits. I rarely use the Series X dev kit at the moment. It's really important, and the PS4 dev kit as well. So it's really important that the team are still thinking along those lines. Now, clearly, we want to be also thinking, how can we make use of the bigger playgrounds in the other consoles? But that doesn't mean you'd stop thinking about how to best use what we've got on the other ones as well. So they're both being thought about.
Yeah. Some of the questions from the chat I've seen from, I don't actually know how to pronounce that name, Ferovi PH, you'll know who you are. Will the scenario planner be improved? Are there any plans for that, Matt?
Not at this time.
Not at this time.
And we'll let you know if that changes.
And on the topic of next generation consoles, will next gen be handled independently from previous generation? So that kind of touches on the fact that you said you didn't want to. You've got a bigger playing field, haven't you? Are you going to hold back those consoles, or are you going to sort of see what you can do with them?
No, we're one of the benefits of moving to 426 is we're now able to make bespoke builds on PS5 and for the next gen Xbox as well. So we're actually now generating 5 builds. So we generate for PS4, for Xbox One, we generate for PC, Series X and S, and PS5. So 5 different builds get kicked out now from the build system, and each of them can be configured, customized, and so forth independently. And just as currently we can set up timetables, which it can load up a different timetable for the PC than it does on the Xbox than it does on the PS4. The same is true with the PS5 and the Series X. So we can tailor the experience to get the best out of each of the individual platforms. So we're not going to hold anything back because of that. Certainly not.
This is what the chat are asking. So it means Parsons 1988 asked, does it mean next generation will get things that the current generation can't?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I would fully expect that. They've got more memory to play with, more CPU to play with. I would expect it to be closer to, I'd love it to be the same as a PC level experience, but let's say closer to the PC experience, because there's the playground's that much bigger with the next gen than it is on the older one. But we don't want to forget the older ones. We still want to make sure that is a great experience. But no, where we can add more functionality, it's one of our key goals with supporting next gen is being able to do more with that, use that extra horsepower and memory in those machines, and just give an even better experience there.
So it makes sense, really. If you've got the power, you've got the memory, you've got the hardware that can handle the extra stuff. Why not give it? Why not give it all that extra?
That's why we make the extra builds. Because if it was just one build for the Xbox, for example, and it worked across all of them, you couldn't do that. Everything would have to run the same stuff. Whereas by separating the builds out, which we can do now, we can make the build for the next gen Xbox consoles do more.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, we are not going to neglect the current console users who don't have the newer generation. We are still going to show you some love, but there's absolutely no point in holding back the next generation if we don't need to.
Yep, it'll be a great experience when you get there.
Exactly. Now, I've seen a lot of people asking about future roadmaps and future updates that we're going to discuss. So for the next few roadmaps, we're going to be covering, say, a specific topic. So tonight it's been immersion, controls, and the functionalities, and then a little bit of preserve collection from Adam. Going forward, we will focus on specific topics, but we'll probably let you know what they're going to be a little bit closer to the time, depending on how we're getting on with things. Isn't that right, Matt?
Absolutely. We don't want to talk about things that are not, in the right place to talk about them. So when things get to the a good place where we can talk confidently about and answer your questions, then we absolutely want to get on here and say, hey, this is what it is. Have a look.
Yeah. Now, Adam, we're being asked about the preserve collection and actually how the next generation is going to affect the preserve collection. Will the split will the split affect what you're doing with the preservation crew?
Not to my knowledge, no. If there are improvements and feedback that the users, players have given us, then we're very open-minded, we're very flexible about what we're doing going forward. One of the things we are going to try and do, though, is improve on the rate of release of the fixes. We'd like to get the improvements we make out much faster than they have currently been. We realise that is an issue at the moment. So that's the only thing that we're trying to sort out. There's no limits per platform.
No, the way that it's structured is that Adam's team will submit a change in one place, and then the build system will take that and make 5 versions of it, essentially,
right,
customized and for each of the different platforms it needs to go on. So no, one change submission can then be deployed to all 5 platforms, and normally we would be deploying all 5 simultaneously as well. So when the fix goes live on one, it's there or thereabouts going to be on all of them.
I mean, just to cover all bases, if the main team introduce a feature that is only supported by a particular graphics card of, say, a PlayStation 5 or something, or because of the memory on the new Xbox, then that feature, if it gets rolled out to the Preserve collection, would only be relevant to that piece of hardware. So there may be instances like that come up, but there's certainly nothing on the radar of that caliber at the moment.
Mm-hmm. And just so we're clear with regards to the updates you mentioned, that is something you're currently looking into with regards to releasing more often. You don't have anything set in stone yet, do you?
Because it's not a system that my team directly control, it's partly management and coordination with the build team. It is actually a company improvement. It's a system improvement that we're working on. Yeah, but we know it's a high priority. Getting fixes out faster is a high priority. Some of the stuff that's going to come out with Rush Hour, say to Bakerloo, has been finished and ready for a number of months. Such as also another one, the freight exchange scenario on Rursig, that is fixed and will come out with Rush Hour. So yeah, we wanted to get something like that out sooner, but it's been very difficult so far.
Yeah. Just to answer a couple of questions from the chat, will Rush Hour be free? It will not. It will be $24.99 for the 3 routes. When will it be coming out? I think you all know I'm not going to give you an answer to that one. It'll be out in the summer. When we have an exact date for you, expect us to make a very big deal about it, and then we're going to tell you. For other information with regards to the roadmap, the 313 is still in development, but we want to spend a bit more time on it at the moment. It will not be being released before Rush Hour, but it has not been forgotten. Now, actually, I said that the Rush Hour update is $24.99, but the core update, that's free, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So if you the Rush Hour update, the $24.99 is the 3 route bundle that gets you the 3 routes. If you do nothing, then you'll get the free core update, which gives you things like the new controller functions and the new pause screen, all the stuff we've talked about today is part of the core update, which is free.
Yes. So it's
so everyone will be upgraded to 426, but the routes and trains, they are the $24.99.
Exactly. It's the Rush Hour add-on that will be $24.99. And then one more thing, the Train Sim Germany stuff. I've seen people asking with regards to that. We are not looking at anything coming out this year from the last we've heard. That is just the information we have. I don't know if anybody's heard anything else, but that is the information as we have it. Right, so let's go to some questions from the chat, if that's okay with everyone.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. So for the next generation versions, there will be a whole new game for the same Xbox One version, or will it be updated?
Sorry, answer the question again. I think you mean is it going to be its own?
Yeah, is it going to be, so I think the question, this is from R93, is will there be a brand new game? So will it be PlayStation 5 Train Sim World 2, or will it simply be an update?
So on an Xbox Series X, your update will be the Xbox Series X version of the game, whereas you're currently running the Xbox One version of the game. And on a PS5, instead of getting the PS4 version, you will get, so you don't need to do anything. It's just that what we deliver to you will be the one for your console. So you will get a dedicated version for that console, but it's not like you have to get an additional product or something. It won't be an additional item in the PlayStation Store or anything like that. It'll just, what you get will be the version for your console.
BT, you're asking what are the new passengers going to be like? So we're not quite at a point where we're ready to talk about passengers yet, but that will be one of the topics that you can look forward to in future roadmaps. But we're not quite there when it comes to talking about passengers, so we don't want to give you information before we're ready. Let's see, will system requirements on PC change, or will the 4.26 version run as well as it does on my current PC? That's from the Lonius.
Not expecting any change to system requirements at all, and we're looking at performance at the moment of 426 and seeing what we can do to just get more out of it, to be honest. And there's the team, one of the big things the Rush Hour team have been doing is a bunch of performance work, particularly around the passengers. No, I wouldn't expect us to. It should work the same as it works at the moment, so don't worry about
that. Levi 6859 asked, how will draw distance be handled on the next gen consoles?
Let's cover that one nearer the time.
Thought you were about to say right now. I was, oh my gosh, I was like, don't do that.
We've got a bunch of stuff to talk about as we go through, as Natalie said. So yeah, we'll cover things as they're in the right place to talk about them.
Yeah. Jaegernat, great name, is asking, does the game run better on 426 out of the box? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that question.
No, it's taken work for the team to take it from, because again we've moved all the bricks and the windows over to the new foundations, and it was frankly a bit of a mess. So the team has spent a bunch of time resorting out and re-optimizing and looking at how the game runs to see some of the ways that we were doing things are not necessarily the ideal way. So they're looking at how that works. There are better ways to do things in 426, and kind of coming out the other side of that now to where we've rebalanced the game again. So it's by no means upgrading Unreal Engine has been literally months of work. It's not like putting a new driver in, changing your DLLs or something like that. It has literally been months of work for the team to actually do this. So no, think about this as a major upgrade for the work that's gone into it. Totally.
To counter that, actually, so if it's months and months work, why would we do it? Why do we want to go up to 426?
So we want next gen console support is one of the key things. There's also some new graphical features. There's all sorts of reasons to keep updated to the current one. We spent a long time not upgrading. We stayed with 416 for a long time, and then suddenly we needed to get to 423, and boy, did that hurt. That was a long work. That was probably over a year's worth of work to get up to 423, and so we didn't want to wait that long again. So it's kind of, this is the next annual update. Let's get the next engine update done. And by the way, we also need it for next gen console support. So that's kind of one of the overriding things. But it also So it fixes some issues that it might have had on various drivers and platforms. It just makes good sense. It's good development sense on the latest version when you can.
That's actually
and that's a free upgrade to everyone as well. Yeah, the latest version.
That's actually an interesting question as well, because I have seen it asked by the community as well, which is, why do we keep updating? And is it a case of if we didn't, we'd eventually, well, I imagine if we didn't, eventually the game would just run out of capabilities. Eventually it would stop.
Well, it would be stuck. It would continue to do as it does today. It wouldn't do more things. We could code in new features in the game, but you wouldn't get then necessarily take advantage of newer features in operating systems, in consoles, in graphics cards, in DirectX drivers. Whereas by continually upgrading the engine, the core of our game is always bang up to date. And not a 5-year-old game. It is a today's game, which is really key. It means that there's a lot more potential possibilities that we can do rather than closing it down as time progresses.
Yep. Right. Are there going to be any changes to weather?
Talk about that when we come to it.
Okay. Let's see. And will Series S also get an upgrade?
Series S will be running. We're going to be producing a next-gen Xbox version, which is so it's a next-gen Xbox version and a next-gen PS5 version. The next-gen Xbox version will tailor itself to whether it's on an S or an X. So yes, you'll be getting the next-gen Xbox version on the Series S.
Yeah.
Microsoft and their X's and S's.
Oh, don't even get me started. When I first, also actually, Pot Kettle Black, we are not much better with Train Simulator, Train Sim World, Train Sim 2020, Train Sim World 2.
Train Sim.
That's true. That is very true.
So I don't think we're really in a position to complain about the names.
Two's a good number.
Let's have a look at some of the questions. I saw one, and while I was answering that, it's from Smurfy. Are there any upcoming routes in the new roadmap? So what is currently on the roadmap is what is being worked on, but I don't believe there's anything being added at the moment. Have we discussed immersion controls? Yes, we have. If you go back, we've definitely covered quite a lot with regards to immersion controls. Actually, there's quite a lot you can look forward to on that. Mm-hmm. Are HMA layers possible on next generation consoles? I was wondering if that one was going to get asked.
I hinted at it earlier on, and it is one of the things that we're looking at. I actually don't see any reason why not, but we haven't actually proved it and made it work yet. So I'm not going to say yes. But it is one of the key areas we are looking at is, that's a specific task is once we've got the dedicated builds on the Xbox, we'll try turning that on and we'll run that through test and make sure that it's all good. But the Xbox Series X adds way more extra memory than we needed for the layers. So we're generally quite confident about that, actually.
That is something you're going to look into. But the saying you're confident, that sounds an awful lot like you're saying we're going to do that.
No, I think ultimately it's going to fall to the preservation crew to try and bring that. Yeah, so we'll see. Nothing yet.
PAAA has asked, will donkeys continue to be supported in the new update? I certainly hope so.
I need to have a chat with the art team and just make sure that's on their radar, because I know that for a fact that they did not appreciate how important that was to the community. They thought they were having a bit of a giggle. And it's become the #1 feature everyone asks about with any new route update, which nobody really expected that donkeys would be the thing. I know when we started talking to Sean from Skyhook and Readiness for the Cane Creek stream, and we said to him, we're having a conversation on here on Teams before the stream, said, Sean, are there any donkeys on the Cane Creek? And he just looked at us like we were mad. I was like, what? What do you mean they're donkeys?
So does that mean there's no donkey?
Well, it's Skyhook route. Cane Creek is a Dovetail environment team signature.
Okay.
So it is kind of their little signature. You'll find if you're not familiar with the donkeys, then what it is that the team are they're one of their little fun things they like to put in the route is somewhere on the route you will find a donkey, and they're in the most amusing places. And there's so if you, for example, I'll give you one example because it's relatively easy anyway. On Colne Station, if you go the other way out of the station from where the route is, going across the big bridge, just at the end of that bridge, in reality there's two big statues of horses, and in our route there are two big statues of donkeys. Those are really obvious. Some of them are really quite well hidden, including in sometimes they're 3D models. In one case they're a piece of artwork. They're just as if they were graffitied onto the side of a wall. So you're not even sure necessarily what you're looking for all the time, but when you spot it, you ha, found it.
Yeah,
your
I'm
reward
yet
for
to find a donkey, so
your reward for finding the donkeys is being able to say, aha, I found it, and nothing else.
yes. And nobody give any locations to donkeys in the chat. It is a rite of passage. Everybody has to find their own donkeys.
They're amazing. They're so much fun.
Just to bring us back on topic with regards to the next generation consoles, if that's okay. I know that we love talking about the donkeys. But if we are adding layers to the next generation ones, does that mean we're just going to stop trying to add them to the previous generation?
No, but when we hit, we're never trying to run out of to hit the limits on the older consoles. And Munich is the first and only time that has happened to date. And we learned from that, and we learned from perhaps if we were going to do that again, we would approach that timetable in a different way. I don't know what that would be, but that was a learning point for us. No, we still want to get the best experience out of each of the platforms. We don't just say, well, let's put a basic one out on the old consoles and put the all singing, all dancing on the new one. We'll try and get the base consoles to the best we possibly can, but naturally it won't be as good as you can potentially get on the next gen, because the next gen consoles are massively more powerful.
Yes.
So there is a realization you are going to have to accept that if you're on the older console, it can't do as much, and we aren't going to hold the next gen consoles back because of that. But we are also not going to just treat that as a second class citizen. It's still going to get the best effort we can on those consoles as well.
That is great. BT's asked, when will the East Coast Way get passenger information boards? Many question marks. That's a you question, isn't it, Adam?
Yeah, so that is going to be with the Rush Hour release. And one of the reasons we still haven't released it yet, the issue at Lewes Station, we have now resolved that as well. So that is appearing. That was part of the problem with the scenario planner and the backwards facing trains. So yeah, PIS systems on stations is coming with Rush Hour for East Coast Way.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, with that, I think we will call it an evening. So just wanted to thank you both for joining us tonight and answering as many questions as you could. Tomorrow is...
I can ask many more questions.
I'm sure you could.
I know Sam is lurking somewhere.
Back in your box, Adam.
Tomorrow is Wednesday, which means it's Workshop Wednesday with you again, Matt, isn't it?
Yes.
Joining Jamie. And then on Thursday, we have a Cane Creek stream with Matt again. You've got a busy week this week, Matt.
It's because I love it so much. It's awesome.
Yeah. So it'll be Matt and JD on Thursday for Cane Creek. We can also look forward to having you on future Rush Hour roadmap streams, can't we, Matt?
Yep, I'm here to answer questions.
We will pull Adam in as and when we need him. So thank you both.
Sam lets me in.
Yeah, and Sam, you're there in the background. I don't know if you would like to show yourself. You don't have to. But there he is now. He's watching over us. So a good night from me and Matt.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for watching.
And Adam.
See ya. It's great being here.
Bye, everyone.